Yeah, so there's lots of ways of looking at our ancient minds in the context of our technology world. I won't go through them all now. I mean, it took a whole book to break it apart, but some of them are like, for example, our tendency to be um, distracted by bottom-up information, by stimulus information. That's a very ancient part of our brain. As a matter of fact, our attention is driven through these two forces. One is goals, we call that top down. The other is bottom up by the sensory world itself. That was the more ancient approach. That was the more ancient driving force of attention, right? The bottom up influence on attention is what basically allowed us to survive. It allowed us to seek out nutrients and to avoid toxins. So even at our very earliest stages, we were driven by the stimuli of the world to either move towards or away, which eventually became this attentional system. We're still very susceptible to that. It's not gone. It's an ancient part of our brain, but it's still there. It's still important for our survival, but it's the same exact aspect of attention that's often used by technology companies to pull our attention towards devices, buzzes, and vibrations, and flashing lights and notifications. So that's an example of an ancient part of our brain that is challenged by the technology world and probably by design. Um, Another is that we have very fundamental limitations in our cognitive control abilities. We can't distribute our attention broadly very well. We have to focus. We take in a very limited amount of information. We can't hold an infinite amount of information in mind. Our working memory has very limited capacity. We can't simultaneously stream multiple sources of information, right? We know that you have to move between them. And so these are ancient limitations. They've always been there. You see them in other animals. And these are the types of limitations that technology uniquely challenges because it's presenting us with lots of information source and incredible accessibility. So again, an ancient aspect of our brain that is challenged by technology. I think the third that I would mention is, this is more of a hypothesis. It's presented in the book through optimal foraging theories. One particular one known as the marginal value theorem, which I really latched onto as an idea I was excited about, and Larry was willing to work through it with me, and we wound up presenting it hopefully in a way that's at least provocative to people. And that's the idea of why we would multitask in the first place, especially in the second place when we know it is negative for our performance. And I think that a lot of the driving forces are some very ancient driving forces that sort of encouraged our ancestors or drove our ancestors, our ancient ancestors, to forage for food for survival. That we essentially forage for information as well, and that our reward system has really been optimized for information itself, not just for survival purposes. And so we're often pulled in directions that we may consciously have reached a decision that are not healthy for us, but yet we're still pulled to engage in them in a certain way. And so these are the pressures that I believe create the negative aspects of how technology impacts us.